At my mom's birthday party, she gave a speech and said, "All my children made this family proud except one." Everyone knew she meant me. Someone recorded it and sent it to me that I didn't react. But the next time she saw me, she went completely pale because someone sent me a video the morning after my mom's birthday party. The message said, "You should see what she said about you." I opened it while standing in my kitchen still half asleep. The video showed my mom in her backyard holding a glass of wine. There were balloons, a cake, and a bunch of relatives standing around. My brother Daniel was near the grill. My sister Karen was next to the table with the food. I wasn't there. I hadn't been invited. My mom tapped her glass and started talking. "I just want to say how proud I am of my children," she said. "Daniel built his company from nothing. Karen raised 2 wonderful kids." People clapped. Then she smiled and added something else. "All my children made this family proud except one." There was a pause. Someone behind the camera whispered, "Sandy." That was me. My mom shrugged a little. "You know how it is. Some kids just don't turn out the way you hope." A few people laughed awkwardly. Someone coughed. Then the video ended. I watched it once and put my phone down. The strange part was that I had paid for most of that party. Daniel had called me 2 weeks earlier saying Mom was struggling with money and wanted to do something small for her birthday. I transferred the money the same day. Catering, decorations, cake, all of it. I didn't ask questions. I never did. That had been my role in the family for years. Daniel always had some kind of business problem. Karen was always between jobs. My mom was always going through a hard time and somehow I was always the one helping. 3 years earlier my mom almost lost her house because she hadn't paid property taxes for 2 years. Daniel asked if I could help. I sent the money without telling anyone it was me. She still thought Daniel had saved her. I never corrected her. In my family's version of reality, Daniel was the successful one, Karen was the devoted mother, and I was the disappointment. Mostly because I stayed quiet and didn't explain myself. After watching the video, I didn't call anyone. I didn't send messages. I just went to work like normal. 2 weeks passed. Then Daniel called. "Hey Sandy," he said. "Mom's doing a small family dinner Sunday. You should come." "Hey," I said. Sunday evening I drove to my mom's house. When I walked inside, everyone was already sitting at the table. Karen looked surprised to see me. Daniel gave me a quick nod. My mom turned toward the door. At first she smiled. Then she noticed the folder in my hand. Her smile disappeared instantly. She stared at it for a second. Then her face went completely pale because the papers inside that folder were something she definitely wasn't expecting to see. My mom kept staring at the folder like she already knew it was bad news. No one else noticed yet. Karen was talking about her kids. Daniel was pouring wine and a couple of my cousins were arguing about something near the kitchen. I walked in and sat down like nothing was wrong. "Hey Sandy," Daniel said. "Long time." "Yeah." My mom still hadn't said anything. She just kept glancing at the folder. Dinner started the way these dinners always started. Small talk. Karen complaining about work. Daniel talking about some big opportunity he was working on. After about 10 minutes my mom finally looked at me. "You brought paperwork to dinner?" "Yeah." "For what?" "You'll see." She didn't like that answer. The truth was simple. I had spent the last 2 weeks organizing everything. Bank transfers, loan records, property documents, every payment I had ever made for anyone in the family. I never planned to show it to anyone before. I just kept the records for taxes and legal reasons. But after watching that video, I realized something. In my family, the story about me had already been written and I had been letting everyone else write it. Dinner ended and people started moving to the living room for cake. That's when I opened the folder. "Before we do cake," I said, "there's something I want to show you." Daniel frowned a little. "What is this? Some kind of presentation?" "Not really." I took out the first sheet and slid it across the table toward my mom. She didn't touch it at first. "Just read the top line," I said. He picked it up slowly. Her eyes moved across the page then back to the top again. "What is this?" she asked. The property tax payment for this house, I said. The room went quiet. Karen leaned forward. What do you mean? That payment was 3 years ago. $42,000. Daniel looked confused. Yeah, he said. I remember that. I helped Mom with that. I shook my head. No, you didn't. Then I slid another paper across the table. Bank transfer confirmation, my account number, the amount, the date. Daniel stopped talking. Karen looked at him. Wait, what? I pulled out another document. And this, I said, is the $20,000 I loaned Daniel when his company almost went under. Daniel shifted in his chair. That was temporary, he said. You said it was fine. It was fine, I said, but Mom should probably know where it came from. Then another paper. And this is the rent I paid for Karen during the divorce. Karen blinked. You never told anyone about that. I didn't think it mattered. My mom hadn't moved. She was still holding the first document. You're saying, she started slowly, you paid the taxes on my house? Yes. For the whole amount? Yes. Daniel looked at her. Mom, I thought. I know what you thought, I said. Nobody spoke for a few seconds. The room suddenly felt smaller. Then I said the part one had been thinking about since I saw that video. I watched the speech from your birthday party. My mom looked up quickly. Someone near the couch whispered, oh. I continued. You said all your children make you proud except one. My mom's mouth opened slightly but no words came out. I closed the folder and stood up. That's fine, I said. You're allowed to think whatever you want about me. Then I placed one more document on the table. And that was the moment my mom turned even paler than before, because this one wasn't about money I had already given them. It was about something that was about to happen next. Everyone was staring at the last paper on the table. No one touched it. Daniel finally leaned forward and pulled it closer. What is this? It's a notice, I said. For what? For the house. That got everyone's attention. Karen sat up straight. What do you mean for the house? Daniel scanned the page quickly, then slowed down and started reading it again. His face changed. Wait, hold on. He looked at me. This says the house is under a lien. Yes. For $42,000. Yes. Karen frowned. But you said you paid that already. I did. Daniel looked confused. Then why is there a lien? Because the payment was a loan. The room went quiet again. My mom finally spoke. You said you helped, she said. You never said it was a loan. You never asked. She stared at me. You're saying I owe you $42,000? Yes. Daniel immediately jumped in. Come on, Sandy. You can't be serious. This is Mom's house. I know. Karen looked between us. This has to be some kind of misunderstanding. It's not. I opened the folder again and showed them the contract. It wasn't complicated. Just a simple legal agreement tied to the property records. When I paid the taxes, the lawyer who handled the payment suggested protecting the money with a lien on the house. At the time, I didn't think it would ever matter. I assumed the family would eventually pay it back or at least acknowledge it. Instead, 2 weeks ago my mom stood in front of everyone and called me the one child who didn't make her proud. Daniel rubbed his forehead. So what now? He asked. Nothing, I said. What do you mean nothing? It just means the loan still exists. Karen looked nervous. But Mom can't pay $42,000. I know. My mom was still holding the paper. She looked smaller somehow. You're doing this because of the video. No, I said. The loan existed long before the video. But you're bringing it up now. Yes. Daniel leaned back in his chair. This is ridiculous. Is it? You're going to threaten Mom over money. I'm not threatening anyone. I stood up and closed the folder again. You can keep the house, I said. No one is taking it tomorrow. Karen asked the question everyone was thinking. Then why show us this? I looked at my mom. Because from now on, the story about me changes. No one said anything. For years they had all believed the same version of things. The one where Daniel was the successful son, Karen was the responsible one, and I was the quiet failure who somehow always had money to help. That story ended tonight. But the real reason my mom had turned pale earlier wasn't the lien. That was just the beginning, because there was something else none of them knew yet. Something Daniel was about to find out the hard way. Daniel was the first one to speak again. "This is unbelievable," he said. "You show up out of nowhere, drop a bunch of paperwork on the table, and suddenly Mom owes you money." I didn't answer. Karen looked nervous. "Daniel, maybe just listen." "No," he said. "This doesn't make sense." I opened the folder again. "There's one more thing." Daniel laughed quietly. "Of course there is." I took out another document and placed it on the table in front of him. He picked it up immediately. At first he looked annoyed, then confused, then he stopped talking. Karen leaned over his shoulder. "What is it?" Daniel didn't answer. She grabbed the paper from his hands. A few seconds later she looked at me. "Sandy, what is this?" "It's the original loan agreement from 5 years ago." Daniel finally spoke again. "That's not relevant anymore." "It is." Karen looked back at the page. "Daniel," she said slowly, "this says you personally guaranteed the loan." He shifted in his chair. "Yeah, temporarily." "No," I said. "Not temporarily." The room felt tense again. Karen kept reading. "Wait. This says if the loan isn't repaid, the guarantor becomes responsible for the balance." Daniel looked annoyed. "I know how guarantees work." "Then you should also remember who gave you the money." Daniel looked at me. "You said it was help." "It was." "That's not the same thing as a loan." I slid another page across the table. "Bank transfer confirmation. Same amount. Same date as the agreement. $20,000. Daniel stared at it. "You're saying I owe you $20,000 now, too?" "No," I said. "Then what are you saying?" I leaned back in the chair. "You actually owe $34,000. Karen blinked. "Where did the other 14 come from?" "Interest." Daniel pushed the paper away. "This is insane." "Is it? You never once asked me about this. You never once mentioned paying it back." Karen looked between us again. "Wait. Are you actually asking him to pay you?" "No," I said. That confused them even more. "Then what is the point of all this?" Daniel asked. I closed the folder again. "The point is that the bank asked me the same question last week." Daniel froze. "What bank?" "The one that's about to review your company's finances." Karen frowned. "Why would they ask you anything about Daniel's company?" Daniel looked at me now with a completely different expression. Because he already knew the answer. I waited a few seconds before saying it. "Because they contacted me after they found my name in your financial records." Karen looked confused. "My name?" she asked. "No," I said. "Then why?" Daniel interrupted her. His voice sounded different now. "What exactly did you tell them?" I looked at him. "The truth." The silence that followed was longer than any before. Then Daniel asked the one question he clearly didn't want to ask. "What truth?" I looked around the room at everyone watching. "The truth about where your company's money actually came from." And that was the moment Daniel realized the problem he had was much bigger than owing me money. Daniel didn't move for a few seconds. Everyone else in the room was waiting for him to say something. Finally he looked at me. "What exactly did you tell them?" "The truth," I said again. Karen still looked confused. "Can someone explain what's going on?" Daniel ignored her. "You talked to the bank about my company." "They called me." "Why would they call you?" "Because when they reviewed your financial statements, they saw several large deposits that didn't match your reported revenue." Karen slowly turned toward Daniel. "What deposits?" Daniel didn't answer. I did. "The ones that came from my account." Karen blinked. "You funded his company?" "More than once." Daniel rubbed his face. "This isn't what it sounds like." I shrugged. "It's exactly what it sounds like." Karen was still trying to understand. Wait. Daniel, you always said the company was profitable. It is. Then why would Sandy be sending money to it? Daniel didn't respond. So I continued. The first time was 5 years ago. 20,000, that's the loan we just talked about. Karen looked down at the documents again. And the other times? She asked quietly. 3 more transfers, I said. Totaling 86,000. The room went silent again. Karen stared at her brother. You told everyone the business was growing. It was, Daniel said quickly. But you needed almost $100,000 from Sandy. It was temporary. I shook my head. The bank didn't see it that way. Daniel looked back at me sharply. What did you say to them? They asked where the money came from. I told them. And they asked if those were investments, loans, or undeclared ownership. Karen frowned. Ownership? Yes. Daniel leaned forward. You told them you were an investor. No, I said. I told them the truth. Daniel waited. I told them the money was personal loans that were never repaid. Karen covered her mouth. My mom was completely quiet the entire time. Daniel looked like he was doing calculations in his head. You had no right to say that. They asked. You could have just said it was personal. It was personal. He stared at me. You know what this does to my company? I nodded. Yes. Karen looked worried now. Daniel, what does it do? Daniel didn't answer. I did. It means the bank now knows his company was operating with undocumented debt. Karen's face changed. And that's bad. Yes. Daniel pushed his chair back. You didn't have to do this. I didn't do anything, I said. I answered their questions. You could have warned me. You could have paid me back. The room stayed quiet for a long moment. Then my mom finally spoke. Sandy. It was the first time she had said my name all evening. Why are you doing this to your family? I looked at her. For years, I said, I helped this family quietly. No one argued with that. And 2 weeks ago, I continued, you stood in front of everyone and said I was the one child who didn't make you proud. She didn't respond. I stood up and picked up the folder. I'm not here to ruin anyone's life, I said. Then I looked at Daniel. But the bank isn't finished asking questions yet. Daniel stared at the table. Because he knew something the rest of them didn't know. And if the bank kept digging, they weren't just going to find my loans. They were going to find something much worse. Daniel kept staring at the table. No one spoke. Karen looked between us again. What else could they find? Daniel finally stood up. Nothing, he said. But he didn't sound convincing. I picked up the folder and walked toward the door. Before leaving, I turned back. For the record, I said, I never planned to show any of this to the family. My mom watched me carefully now. Then why did you? I looked at her. Because after your speech, I realized something. She waited. For years you all believed a story about me that wasn't true. No one argued with that. So now, I said, everyone finally knows the real one. I opened the door. Behind me, Daniel was still standing next to the table, completely quiet. Because he understood what the others didn't yet. The bank had only started asking questions. And once they finished, the family wouldn't be talking about my loans anymore. They would be talking about his company. And that was a much bigger problem. The much bigger problem. The much bigger problem.